Well, welcome back to the MaxBet podcast. I'm here with Joe Solosky with NASCAR. And I'm very excited to talk today because I don't think a lot of people know about motorsports betting or what that looks like on this scale. And I think in Vegas especially, we hear a lot about Formula One. That's the big new buzz right now. But NASCAR has been like an Americana legend for so long and for so many decades now. I don't know how long it's been around.
76 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
To be exact. Cool. All right. So pretty established. But you guys are now getting into the sports betting side. To back it up a little bit, how did you even get into sports betting with NASCAR?
First of all, thanks for having me here. This is really nice. It's a good way to kick off the week. My path to sports betting is a bit serpentine, probably not very replicable. I have a lot of people that come to me and say, how do I get in the sports betting world? Like, don't follow my path. Okay. Maybe some of the lessons learned in terms of persistence are something to look at, but I started out my career in a past life in the military and the intel community. So graduated from the Naval Academy, was in the Navy. When I got out of the Navy, I joined the intel community. So I was with the FBI for 6 years. Was going to do that for my whole career. I loved working there. It was a great organization. But my wife got stationed in Germany, so she joined the Army. And we moved overseas, and I couldn't work for the Bureau anymore while we lived in Germany, with always the intention of moving back to the U.S. and working for the FBI again. But I saw, this was in 2015, and I saw how mature the sports betting world was globally. And I was like, you know what? I'm here for 3 years, don't really have a plan of what I'm going to do. It'd be kind of fun to see if I could get into this sports betting world. So I just started blindly applying for jobs. Data suppliers, casinos, operators. I mean, at the time, I didn't even know what the difference was between those groups, but I just was basically applying for any job I could. And ultimately, Sport Radar gave me an interview, and the role that they hired me for was to be an account manager for virtual sports in Africa and Asia, which I was happy to do, but I knew nothing about that space at all. Long story short, that's how I got into sports betting. But realistically, what that looked like was I had to go and spend pretty much all of my time in Africa and Asia and learn those betting markets and then sell Sport Radar's virtual sports products in Africa and Asia.
What was it like there as far as just, I'm sure the regulation, they're much different.
I mean, even within Africa, and I was very naive to this, there's 50 plus countries within Africa itself. So Nigeria is different from Kenya, is different from South Africa, but it's ultimately a cultural difference. So if you wanted to boil it down to kind of two simple, I guess a dichotomy between the two regions was Africa was very much similar to the US in terms of parlays or small amounts to win big amounts of life-changing amounts of money. So it was really about putting a 12-leg bet together or, seeking out a jackpot. Whereas in Asia, it was very much, a $2,000 bet to win $250. So when you were selling the virtual sports product, which is meant to mirror what real sports betting looks like, albeit in a kind of micro environment, you had to talk to the operators much differently in terms of how the product would attract their customers. And also there are the cultural differences of how you sell in Africa and Asia as a white man to those businesses. I can't just go to Ghana and say, hey, I'm Joe, would you buy our virtual soccer product?
Yeah.
I had to spend time with them and have them get to know me and build that level of trust. And same with Asia. So it was an experience that probably I could never replicate or tell someone to go out and pursue on their own.
When you came to the U.S. and you started doing, relationship partnerships, things like that, were you like, oh, this is so much different? Was it just night and day compared to what you were doing?
It was a bit more, I guess, familiar because I didn't work with many people who were Americans when I was in Europe. I think I only met one person at Sport Radar who had an American accent when I was there during my 3 years. So to be with a team selling data to, PointsBet at the time, DraftKings, FanDuel, more, people who I had these kind of commonalities with, I suppose, made it a little bit easier. But at the same time, I had never sold Sport Radar data before. It was always virtual sports. So it was a little bit of a learning curve for me.
Yeah. Do you feel like your background, 6 years at the FBI, that has to give you some kind of edge, right? Did that help at all?
Well, it's funny because I think that my resume with, having FBI on there lends, at least it piques some interest, right?
Okay.
I'll admit that. So I think that's what got me an interview at Sport Radar. And that yeah, sure, that leads to a level of like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. I just want to like, if I'm not going to hire this person, I want to talk to them and like learn more about that. But the leadership skills, the interpersonal skills that you get, not just from the FBI, but my time at the Naval Academy and my time in the military, that all sets you up to exceed, I think, in any sort of ambiguous environment. So whether that was, going to Manila for a week by myself, or going to Accra for a conference, or, going to Toledo and trying to convince them to legalize sports betting, it made me feel, I guess, a bit more comfortable in my shoes of just like, all right, I've done something like this before. This isn't that crazy. It's not life or death. It does kind of ease the tension, and it's also a good conversation starter, frankly.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. What's like the most common question you get asked?
Like, what secrets do you know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, maybe about like JFK or things like that.
Oh,
so.
they get really specific.
Oh, very specific. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. People, I mean, like the guardrails go off in terms of any decorum. It's just like, oh, really? Like, tell me what happened here. Yeah.
Do you ever just like throw them a bone?
I'm sure I have.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially if I could tell that it's, someone's, they're not really interested in knowing too much about me, or it's not going to be a long conversation or a long relationship. I'll just kind of like, maybe make something up or tell a bit of a white lie just to,
Right.
They'll tell that story later on and it'll be harmless, but yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, harmless is the key there. It's not like you're sharing top secret
No.
at all. Yeah. They really teach you how to communicate and how to read people. So does that translate to your job now?
Probably the biggest skill in that sense, in terms of like the reading, is the quiet listening, right? So there's the active listening, the I don't know the second one, but the third one is quiet listening.
Okay.
So the quiet listening is, reading a room and just kind of like understanding your audience. And that doesn't just start when you open the door. It starts with researching and, knowing the culture, knowing the company you're talking to. And I think that helped me because I'm not the most gregarious or outgoing person. I'm not going to go in a room and command it. So a lot of it for me was probably 70%. Like, I'm going to talk 30% of the time and let other people talk 70% of the time and kind of suss out what they want.
Yeah.
Which is, in sales, the sales cycles that I've dealt with in the sports betting world have been anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. So it's not a short process anyway.
Yeah.
And it really is about that relationship building.
That's very true. So after Sports Radar, you went to NASCAR.
Yep.
And you've really built something pretty impressive over there.
Yeah, so when I joined NASCAR was in 2021, and that was really an inflection point for me in my career because I'd been in sports betting for 6 years. I certainly never intended to get in the industry. Do I want to go back to what I was doing before in terms of kind of the government service side? Do I want to pursue another passion? Or is this a skill that's really going to be valuable? Is sports betting going to take off? And is this something that I really just can't put beside me as kind of a cool part of my career? Ultimately, I landed on the latter, and a lot of that was because one of my roles at Sport Radar was I was in charge of kind of startup companies, and those startup companies were not just kind of like, your tech startups. It was startups in the sports betting space. So whether it was Google, Goldman Sachs, consulting firms, banks, I was talking to them about their start in sports betting because they realized that there was some revenue to be made in this space. How do we get involved? And at that point, I had realized that I don't necessarily want to work for a betting company, but I've got these skills and skill set and knowledge in this space, and I would like to use it at a company that would value that experience.
Wow.
So I'd looked at companies like that. I saw that leagues were looking to hire someone to kind of manage their day-to-day sports betting partnerships. And ultimately, NASCAR had one of those openings. I was very open in the process that I did not know NASCAR very well. Actually, the biggest anxiety I had in the whole interview process was if they would ask me about like who my favorite driver was.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Did you have one on the back burner?
I did have one in the back burner.
Okay.
I wasn't asked, but yeah, I did have one. I think a lot of people have this experience with motorsports generally, and I think NASCAR specifically, is that you go to a race and you become hooked. So I started in March of 21. My first race was Pocono, June of 21. I was with a sports betting client, and I was a bit overwhelmed because I had never been to a race, and I was hosting them. So I was supposed to be making sure that they were having a good time, and myself, like, I didn't know where Pocono was, or at least how to get to the track anyway. But going to that race and experiencing it, I was like, wow, I get it. This is a really cool sport. So that certainly helps that I've really fallen in love with the sport. My family loves it. My kids love it. We were just at a race yesterday in Charlotte. My son's out there giving high fives to drivers. So it's become personal.
Yeah.
And that, I think, drives me in my job because I am so passionate about wanting to make the sport relevant from a sports betting perspective. Mm-hmm. We're super relevant culturally for our fans, for our broadcast audience. I don't know how many people know this, but we're the #2 sport in the U.S. from a per event basis on broadcast.
Really?
Behind the NFL. Yeah.
Wow.
So a ton of people watch us. But in terms of sports betting, we lag way behind that. So we're probably the number 9 or 10 sport in terms of betting volume.
So what's the demographic right now for NASCAR? Because like I grew up and the dads of my friends watched it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a couple of my friends went to it, but like everybody knows. It's like such a recognizable logo. Like, yeah, it's a staple for 76 years. The younger generation's getting into it, or is this a great opportunity to also grow that brand awareness and that passion with the younger generations?
Yeah, I mean, from all of our divisions, from broadcast to content to social media, we're trying to broaden the demographic, and I don't think that we're dissimilar from other leagues in that sense. I would say that if you have in your mind of what the NASCAR demographic is, you'd probably be surprised when you go to a race. It is all walks of life at a race. It is someone who has a $400,000 RV who spends, their 3 weeks of vacation in Daytona camping there. It's your family that saves up their whole year for vacation and go to a race in Iowa or Texas or Las Vegas and everywhere in between. I was at an event in Charlotte probably 2 years ago now. I met an African-American man, and he said to me, what do you do? And I told him I worked at NASCAR, and he was like, oh, I never went to a race. I feel like it's not for me and my family. And I was like, you know what? We have a race in Charlotte this weekend. Bring your wife, bring your kids. You'll be my guest. And from the second you walk in, I guarantee that you will change your tune. He was like, all right, you're on. Mm-hmm. So meet him in the parking lot, bring him into the race, and he walks in and he's like, Joe, you're right. Like, this is awesome. And his family, they go to every Charlotte race we have, and maybe people have in their mind something, but it really is counter to what you think, or maybe a little bit different to what most people think.
So what you're saying is I need to go to a race?
Yes.
Okay.
And we race twice a year in Vegas, so we've got a couple opportunities.
Okay, done. So as far as getting into the sports betting over the past few years that you've been there, what's that expansion look like? Like, are you focusing on like iGaming? Do you want like a NASCAR slot? Is there a NASCAR slot on the floor right now? Like, what's that progression been like for you guys?
Yeah, none of it happens overnight.
Right.
Ultimately, from a short-term perspective and how I look at it is that the NASCAR sports betting product as it exists right now is a bit inferior to what you see from an NFL or MLB or some of our other league peers product. So if we have a fan that is used to betting on the NFL every Sunday from September to February, and then Daytona 500 happens the week after the Super Bowl, they'll look at the NASCAR betting product and they're like, oh, this is not as good as betting on the NFL. So one of the charges that I've learned that I have to do in my role and my team has to do is that we have to be a lot more active in terms of product than other leagues may have to be, because the demand is there. I mean, the sports books create a good NFL product because people want to spend their Sundays watching NFL and betting on it. Mm-hmm. For us at NASCAR, we have to bring that product to the operators for them to put that on their books. They're not going to do that on their own.
Okay.
So we've been really careful and deliberate of how we've picked data suppliers who are really invested in our sport and are going to utilize resources to create a good NASCAR betting product. And that has been happening now for 2 years, where there's been product development going on to make a really strong NASCAR, not only pre-match or pre-race product, but also a live product. And I think we're going to see the fruits of that labor in the 2026 season.
So when you're talking about this product, this is like, how the NFL, you can bet on all kinds of different like parlays and all of that. Are you talking about something like that? It's not just like this one's going to win and this one is going to get third place. You're talking about a more like intricate options.
Correct.
Basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
To expand the market offering. So right now, to your point, race winner is the most important and voluminous market.
Okay.
But having those options of who's going to come in top 3, top 5, top 10, who's going to win this stage, who's going to win this lap, who's going to have the fastest lap, those are all interesting markets that will keep you engaged in a 4-hour, 3.5-hour, 3-hour race, as opposed to waiting for a race winner. And there's 36 cars. It's not easy to pick a winner of a race. Okay. So having these different markets helps keeps fans engaged and makes it more consumable. But then the live side also, there's really no live offerings for NASCAR. Okay. And with live bets becoming 50% plus of what people are betting on in the U.S., that has to exist. And right now for NASCAR, it's very limited, and it's really operator by operator of what or if they offer NASCAR from a live perspective. So we want that to be kind of standard across the board.
Right, because I mean, you think about baseball, you have innings, like NFL, you've got your quarters. What does NASCAR have? Like you have laps, but like what other different kinds of things can you bet on and build out other than, like you were saying, just the winners and the losers? What are like interesting things that you can add on? Is it per lap? Can people bet like who wins whatever lap, or like how soon until they go in to change their tires? I'm not sure. Like,
we've broken our race into stages. Okay. So we have 3 stages per race, and those stages can range anywhere from 50 to 90 plus laps. Okay. And in from a time span perspective, that's anywhere from 45 minutes. So equivalent probably to the time an NFL quarter takes. Okay. So that's probably our equivalent in terms of going from pre-match to live, is having these stage-by-stage bets, because there is a natural stop at the end of the stage. The drivers go under caution. There's a restart. There's a commercial, and then you can place your bets for stage 2. Okay. So that's kind of what we're looking at first, from how to kind of like segment a race, utilizing the current format we have for racing. But then from there, if you join a race at lap 22, there will be options for who's going to be the leader at the end of the next 10 laps from when you join. So if you're on lap 22, who's going to be the leader at the end of lap 31?
So it adapts to whenever you jump in.
Correct.
I see what you mean. Okay. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So how are you guys integrating this as far as land-based or online? Are you having any like omni-channel crossovers for that?
Most of it's online focused. Okay. Yeah. Really in the data space now, most of the focus is for the online operators. There are no retail or land-based sports books at any of our tracks at the moment. Okay. That could change, but really the focus has always been online for us. So mobile betting, that's who the data suppliers that we're working with are focused on. So whether it's direct integrate, and that's kind of the bottleneck for us and the data suppliers as well, is integration timelines. So while the product has been ready now for probably 3 or 4 months, the reason it won't be live until next year is just how long it takes to integrate the product.
So you're talking about like FanDuel and DraftKings, those kind of...
Correct,
okay,
yeah.
I see what you mean. Interesting. What's something that you wouldn't say on a panel?
Something I wouldn't say on a panel? I don't know. I mean, I feel like I can't not do a panel and not mention prediction markets right now. I would try to avoid it as much as possible. So probably talking about prediction markets is my answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. If you're on a panel, they ask you a question and then you answer it very, professionally, but you really have more to say on it, what would that have been? Have you been in that situation before?
Oh,
where you're like,
yes,
delivery.
Yes, and I've had the certainly fortune and blessing to be on a lot of panels since I started at NASCAR, and I've learned kind of my way around. I also don't like to be inauthentic, and I feel like you can tell the second someone starts going into coach speak or like the rote answer. Yeah. And that's gotten me, I don't want to say trouble at times, but like I've probably said some things maybe I shouldn't have, that have gotten me a slap on the wrist. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's an important topic to talk about because it's all anyone wants to talk about right now. And it's something that it's not going away. And I don't think prediction markets are a bad thing. Like there's a reason why. I think there are other categories that have popped up in the last year and a half that I've been very vocal against NASCAR getting involved in.
Like what?
Sweeps. Yeah. And I'm not saying that NASCAR is going to get involved in prediction markets. And we've been looking at this for almost a year now. It's become more and more prevalent since January when Kalshi and Robinhood have started to offer sports. And it's become even more prevalent for me since they started offering NASCAR in July. They're not talking to us.
Oh.
So, and I don't think that they're talking to other leagues either. I think now they are starting to engage the leagues a little bit more, but when they started launching their product, the leagues weren't involved. But I think it's getting to this point now where the leagues kind of have to be, from an optics perspective, from the prediction market side, but also from a product improvement perspective, to have the leagues on board, to whether it's bless it with their marks or bless it with official data. We don't know how we're going to get involved, if we're going to get involved in prediction markets. But I think I wasn't here at NASCAR in 2018 when PASPA was repealed. Probably had the same questions of like, do we work with DraftKings and FanDuel? Like, these are the risks involved. You know, this is probably something that's not going away. I think ultimately we've made the right decision in how we engage the sports betting space at NASCAR. And I think we will do so with prediction markets. What we won't do is sit back and let the market dictate what we do. For me, and I think NASCAR generally, our sportsbook partnerships are extremely important. And before we do anything in the prediction market space, I'm going to lean on my sportsbook partners also as a resource of like, hey, how do you think, you know, how are you getting involved in this? How is the league getting involved in this? Look, generally, how is it going to help hurt maintain our relationships?
Yeah, because like with sweeps, they can't use your likeness. Like you could probably send them a cease and desist, right? Like they're not going to be using NASCAR in their games, right? Can you do the same thing with prediction markets or no?
No, not unless they're using IP.
Got it.
Which we've seen. We've seen with one group that is supposedly going to launch in the U.S. pretty soon. But I imagine when they do launch in the U.S., they're going to scrub all, and it's not just our league marks, but I think it's other leagues as well. But there's, as long as they're not violating sort of any IP law, there's not much we can do.
So how would they even promote? Like they can't say bet on this NASCAR race, right?
They could.
They could.
They could just use NASCAR Chicago race.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't violate any kind of IP law.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you get involved before they're regulated so that you can kind of control the narrative a little bit more?
Well, I think that's where, I mean, like this space being so new is that there's probably so many different opinions on how you phrase everything. I mean, I would argue, and I think there'd be people who could argue against me, that they are regulated. The CFTC regulates futures contracts, and these are, by law, futures contracts. So the contracts that are being offered on Kalshi, Robinhood right now, they're really not illegal. Or to say that it's not sports betting, I think is dishonest. I think it is. It's regulated.
I think that's a big pain point, is it being federally regulated versus obviously state by state. Because then you've got like tribal compacts, you've got a lot of things. They're all different. So for that to be the only product to be federally regulated it's honestly really risky, because what if a new administration comes in and they put the kibosh on the whole thing? They could. And
Absolutely.
Then what do you do for all the states that have all that stuff? That just feels super risky.
It is. And I think a lot of it is fly by night right now. I mean, all of this launched in January, and it's coming to, I don't know if it's coming to a head right now, but it's not getting any quieter. And more states are taking a stance, more roundtables are happening, more CEOs are being called to answer questions by different regulatory bodies, and there's more questions than answers. But yeah, if I was running one of these groups, I would have some sort of government affairs group that was looking at the risks and rewards and challenges to a new administration, and what a new director and their political leanings or rulings would have on, you know, a federally regulated product.
Yeah, that's a good point. What are some things you are going above and beyond on that might be atypical?
So education is not atypical, but that's something that is something I spend so much time on. Problem gambling as well. One of the things that we're doing that's very proactive and is more of a deterrent than it's a complete deterrent, as opposed to a kind of punitive measure, is we're working on how to figure out how to share data with either regulatory bodies or sports books themselves on our prohibited players, so people who can't bet on NASCAR, so that if I tried to bet on NASCAR, or if someone grabbed my phone and tried to bet on NASCAR under my account, my MaxBet on NASCAR is 0. And that technology is there. So it's a complete deterrent, right? You don't even have the option. Even if you were tempted to, or it was just a mistake, or it was a nefarious act, you literally can't bet on NASCAR.
Yeah.
And we're starting to figure out how to do that. But there's also an education process and a legal process and an HR process of data sharing and all that we haven't fully kind of flushed out. If I had a magic wand, I wish that there was some sort of I wish there was a combined regulatory act across states that had online sports betting that made that easier, whereas opposed to going one off to an operator in Kansas or Ohio or New York, we could kind of do this across. And I know other sports, feel the same in that sense, because we don't want to, it's not like a looking back mechanism to see who bet on NASCAR. It's more of just like, this is how we truly get a driver, pit crew member, employee to it's not even an option to bet on our sport and have those types of scandals. And what I've been pleasantly surprised about is the level of stakeholder buy-in who otherwise don't necessarily know much about the sports betting space, but they know how important the responsible gaming side is. It's not to say the other leagues aren't doing this as well, because a lot of what I do from a commercial perspective, but also a responsible gambling perspective, I see other leagues doing really well. And that's a part that a lot of people don't know as well, is how collaborative the leagues are in the sports betting space. Yes, we compete from an eyeballs perspective on trying to get to watch our sports, but when it comes to the sweep space, to the prediction space, to DFS plus, NHL, NFL, PGA, NASCAR, we are all talking to each other of best practices. What did you do when this happened? And it has helped me a ton.
So, do you have any good gaming stories? Do you gamble at all?
I do gamble, yeah.
Okay. It doesn't even have to be you winning either.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any good gaming stories?
I was talking to an Asian operator about Sport Radar's. I also sold some of their streaming services, so live streaming for certain sports. And I was talking to this Asian operator for a few months over Skype. Then I finally got to the point where all right, well, you should come to our office in Manila and present to our leadership team. Made the trip out there. I think the guy's name I was talking to is Mark. I get walked in the office. I get a standing ovation from everyone in the office. They're just clapping that I'm there. I walk by every desk. They give me gifts. I go into the boardroom, and it's a group of all Chinese-speaking employees, and they're expecting me to speak Chinese. Rightfully so. I'm in their country.
Yep.
I'm at their company, and I quickly go to Mark, who I just met for the first time, and I was like, Mark, I don't speak Chinese. And he was like, okay, I'll handle it. And about 30 minutes later, a translator comes in. So I'm standing there for 30 minutes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I'm like, this deal.
With gifts.
Yeah, with gifts. With dinner plans with the group as well later on. And all of this is going through my head of oh, man, I'm like, there's no way that this deal is going to get done. Then a translator comes in, and I've never used a translator before. So, I don't know how often the cadence is.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got through this maybe hour-long process, and the translator was terrific because there was that language gap wasn't there. And she had told me, she was like, actually, the reception was quite well. And in my head, I was like, all right, well, at least dinner's definitely off. They don't want to spend any more time with me. And she was like, they would like for you to join for dinner.
No.
So we went out to dinner, which was fine. And I think I was on an antibiotic or something, so I didn't have anything to drink. And this added to the kind of cultural lack of knowledge that I had, is that in Asia, if you have a guest, allergies, food restrictions, the guest has them, then you have to honor that. So the translator asked me, she was like, is there anything I should be aware of? And I was like, well, I'm not drinking at this dinner. And from that moment on, she was like, the deal's off, because the group couldn't have drinks because I wasn't drinking. And I was like, no, feel free. They can drink. She was like, no, they're not allowed to because you can't. And it was like that. And we sat through dinner and they didn't ask me any questions.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was
so bad.
I mean, I had so many good and ultimately that was a great cold, telling my friends that story, they were like, what? That is insane.
Wow.
And it wasn't great that I lost the deal, but ultimately that's just a fun part of the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was probably one of the more interesting like readbacks I had to give to my boss afterwards as to why it didn't go through.
Did they let you keep the gifts?
They did let me keep the gifts, yeah.
They didn't take those back.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, yeah, that had to have been the most awkward dinner.
It was, yeah, there's nothing like it.
Where was Mark at this point? Is Mark even in the room, or is
Mark,
he even there?
Mark was, he spoke very little English. Like we communicated over Skype, and he basically just kind of like got me in the room and let me know I was good to go, and then I wasn't good to go. And that's made being in the U.S. a little bit easier, is knowing that that's probably not going to happen when I have a meeting, this week in Vegas or going forward in Hoboken or Jersey City.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're going to get any standing O's at any of those places, but I could be wrong.
Certainly not. Certainly. That was the first and last standing ovation that I will receive.
That's crazy. Who do you think should be on the podcast next?
I think I would love to have more sports betting representation. It's a really good question. I think you should have someone from the prediction market space on to kind of tell their side of the story. I think the RG space is another one, maybe someone from the AGA. It's probably good to have another league representation as well to tell their side of the story and how they're thinking about the space. Because again, NASCAR is more, well, we're all working on a lot of the same things. We're probably more product focused, whereas the leagues are, I would say, probably more brand focused. I'm stalling on a specific name, as you can tell.
Well, once you think of them, just shoot me an email. A little intro would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. And I really hope you get a standing O in at least one room. So thanks so much for coming on, and we will look forward to more NASCAR in the future.
Thank you, Hillary. I look forward to having you at a race in Vegas soon.
Anytime.